Well, good to see you. We're excited to be back in Citrus County. Normally, well, I take that back. I mean, we were in the area after Hurricane Idalia, helping out. You had a lot of local folks that did a great response on that, and we did provide help there. But normally, when we come to town, we're not coming empty-handed, and so that's today is another example of that. So we've got a good announcement to help the county continue to move forward. I think we have some great potential here. I'm happy to be joined here in Citrus County by the Florida Secretary of Commerce, Alex Kelly. We also have Citrus County Commission Chair Holly Davis, Citrus County Commissioner Rebecca Bays, other officials from across Citrus County, and I'm taking a huge risk with my governorship by having and turning over the podium to Senator Blaise Ingolia later today. They told me not to do it, but I'm going to do it. Are you willing to make a prediction on the Florida-Miami game, and what's the point spread?
Point spread is 2.5. I'm going to take the Gators to win.
Okay. So we'll see what happens. We were, they had the Florida State start off in Dublin. Couldn't do it against Georgia Tech. Now to have Miami, Florida start the season, I don't think this has ever happened. I can remember. So this is going to be something that hopefully will be a good game. And I can sit here. I'm going to talk about some of the great things with Florida. Number one in education now, number one in higher education, number one in education freedom, number one in economic freedom, number one overall for economy 2 years in a row by CNBC, number one lowest per capita debt. State debt in America, all these different things, and we've achieved number one in so many things, but not college football. And I don't know how long most of you lived here. Guys like me that grew up here, in the 80s and 90s, you could set your clock to it. One team from Florida would be competing for a national championship almost every year, and sometimes it was all of them competing. And back in that era, if you had a playoff then, a lot of times the Florida team, who may not have been in the one key bowl game at that time, that Florida team, whether it's FSU, Florida, Miami, they would have ended up winning the playoff back then. I mean, that's just the reality. And so you had so much talent and everything. And so Florida State had one loss last year at the start-off season with a loss. We'll see with Florida. Very difficult schedule, very difficult conference. And then you have the NIL and the transfer and everything like that. It's hard to know what teams are going to be good now, because it used to be, hey, we got this the junior quarterback. He's not going pro. He's coming back. This person. Now it's like, who's going to go to the transfer portal? Who are you getting in the transfer portal? And you really don't know, I think, until they start playing. So we're hoping to see some good things. But I mentioned yesterday, we did have from over in Seminole County, our Lake Mary Little League team won the entire Little League World Championship. That's pretty neat. So we're excited about continuing to move the ball forward here in Florida. I did mention some of the things that we've now made number one in. And when I was growing up 20 some years ago, nobody would have said we would be number one in education. Nobody would have said we'd be number one in higher education. We had tourism and we had agriculture, but no one would have said we would be number one in economy by CNBC. That just would not have been something that would have happened. And yet we've been able to do that. And part of it is because we get the policies right. People like Blaise and the legislature have done a great job. I mentioned the debt. Since I've been governor, all Florida history from the 1840s till I became governor, if you take the amount of debt the state accumulated, we've paid off 36% of that just since I've been in office. And we're going to continue to do more. The legislature provided funds for accelerated debt repayment. We can pay this down at cheaper prices a lot of times using different operations we can do on the open market and retire some of this. So the federal government isn't paying off any debt. They're adding debt. They're adding a lot of debt. And then in this budget, I get the budget. I had to do some line item vetoes to reduce, but we actually spent less in this current year's budget than we did last year's budget. Who is reducing spending anywhere in this country? Certainly not in Washington. They're not going to do that. But yet, even though we had a reduction in the top line spending, we had record investment in education, record increases in teacher salaries, record support for transportation and road building and infrastructure, record support for conservation and Everglades restoration and supporting natural resources. So all of that stuff is getting done that really is meaningful for a lot of people. Oh, no, by the way, we cut taxes by $1.5 billion, which is the second most in history because we did a little bit more the year before. And look, we don't have an income tax, which is great, and we never will as long as I have anything to say about it. But it's harder to cut taxes when you don't have an income tax. You just cut that top rate. We have to find. Right now, we're in the disaster preparedness tax season where you can go get the disaster supplies for tax-free. We did the Freedom Summer in July where you could have concert tickets, all the different events and outdoor stuff, recreation that was tax-free. And of course, we do the back-to-school holiday every year. So we do a lot of different things. So we've stood by taxpayers. We've made sure that we are fiscally responsible, and we are built for the long haul. Look, I don't know what's going to happen with this election. I don't know what's going to happen with the national economy going forward. I can tell you, if you have somebody like Harris actually try to do something like tax unrealized gains, that will tank this economy. We will feel that in Florida big time. You will have capital flee from this country. And here's the thing. First of all, an unrealized gain, it's not even a gain until you realize it. I mean, values fluctuate, and so maybe you buy a stock, and in 2 years it goes up by 30%, but 2 weeks later it could be down 15% from that high. It's just, this is not something, until you sell it, you don't have on the open market, you don't. So the whole thing is ridiculous, but just think about, you have something, you have a home, and there's people in Florida that had nice homes, middle-class homes that maybe 5 years ago were worth $400,000, $450,000. Now some of those are worth $700,000, $800,000 have been sold. Some of them have doubled in value. People then sell the home. Okay, that's a gain. But just staying in your home, what taxing unrealized gains would be, it'd be like, okay, your neighbor's house just sold for 25% more than what it was valued at last year. Therefore, your house is worth that much more. So you have to cut a check to the government for the amount of the gain, 25% of the gain. It is absolutely insane that would happen. Now, what like Harris and the media say, oh, well, she only wants to do this for people that are making they're worth 100 million or something. It's not for normal people. Well, first of all, what I would say, they said the same thing when they introduced the income tax 100 years ago. They said it was just for Rockefeller and Carnegie and all these people. And now, how many people that are middle class pay income tax? They pay income tax. It hits you. So I don't think that that's necessarily comfort. I think once you try to introduce a concept like taxing unrealized gains, you're really opening Pandora's box. It's a massive increase in government power to be able to basically demand tribute just for you doing nothing, just simply holding an asset. If that fluctuates up, you have to pay. If it fluctuates down, the government ain't going to pay you a check, right? So it's heads they win, tails you lose. So the whole thing is ridiculous. But let's just entertain that this would only be confined to people that are worth a really lot of money. If you have somebody that's like a massive billionaire and they own billions of dollars, say, worth of stock for a company, well, if the stock goes up, then they're going to get hit for 25%. So what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to sell the stock in order to pay the tax, or some of the stock. What's that going to do to the market? That will absolutely destabilize the market. So you could be a retired cop, a retired teacher that has a 401k. If you have that stock, that is going to affect you because the value will go down. It's going to create huge volatility in the marketplace to be able to do that. So it's a horrible idea. And oh, by the way, it is also unconstitutional. The founders, when they created the Constitution, you could only do indirect taxes, so things like tariffs and impose on duties, things like that. The 16th Amendment created an income tax, but that is only for income that's actually derived income. It's not for potential gains. So there is no source of constitutional authority for Harris to try to tax unrealized gains. And so And look, I'd hope to say that the Supreme Court would nix it, but these judges, you just don't know. I mean, sometimes they're good, but then sometimes they don't do what's right. So the whole thing, I think, is a huge problem. But that's just one piece. They also want to do capital gains rate at 44.6%, which, again, this is people selling homes. I mean, if you have a home for 20 years and you sell it, the gain is a capital gain. So why should you have to pay half of that to the federal government? It makes no sense. And all this stuff, you've been paying property taxes on that the whole time anyways. So things that have already been taxed to then go and do a huge capital gain tax that's even higher than the income tax, then they'll say, oh, it's only going to be for the wealthy. But again, I don't think that that's true, because I think once government gets its hooks in things, the reality is there's some people that are very, very wealthy. But if you look at where the real money is, like if you taxed 100% every billionaire, you wouldn't even come close to making a dent in the federal budget. I mean, like, you're talking about you'd be able to get, a couple $100 billion. We're trillions, 34 trillion in debt. The real money for these guys that want is to just take some out of the whole broad middle section of the country, middle class. That's what they would want to do. So I do think it would end up hitting middle class people, but still, it's just really, really bad. And then how much money are they going to spend going forward? Fact of the matter is the inflation was accelerated by Biden stimulus. What Harris voted for at the tie-breaking vote in 2021, and then the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which was not about reducing inflation. It was about pursuing an agenda regarding climate ideology and kneecapping domestic energy production, which is also very bad. So that's that vision. And so there's a lot of uncertainty out there is the point. But Florida, we have protected ourselves so that if you do have some rough waters, what we have to do, we have this big surplus. If we have revenues go down, because our revenue goes up even while we cut taxes, because Florida's got a lot of economic activity. But if some respects the national economy did bad, if they did policies that hurt us, and say we had some revenue decline, and then you're like, well, what about education? What about roads? What about, environmental stewardship? All you do is you move some money from the big surplus and you plug it in and you're fine. Like, that's literally all you would have to do. No tax increases. You wouldn't even have to do any real spending. I mean, I'm always looking to cut spending because I think there's ways you can find more and more efficiency. But Florida, we have the lowest per capita number of government bureaucrats at the state level of any state in the United States, the smallest government of any state in the United States based on the number of employees that are poor. So we do a good job on that, but all you do is just plug and play and you're going to be in good shape. And I think that's something that's really important. And we vetoed billions of dollars in spending since I've been governor. And not that some of it was not good, some of it was fine, but it's like, okay, you got to prioritize. And I want to make sure that we are built for the long haul, that we're able to withstand whatever may be thrown our way that are beyond our control. Heck, even the natural disasters, we put aside $500 million every year for disaster response. Would you rather have Florida leading the charge for you, or would you want to rely on the federal government leading the charge for you? Fact of the matter is we've pioneered a lot of ways to be more effective at disaster recovery and response. And so we have housing programs, we have home improvement programs that we've been able to do. It goes much quicker, much less red tape. Sometimes we get reimbursed for it, but if you don't, that's fine. We have the ability to do that and to get people back on their feet. So all of those things I think are really, really important, that the state is in really good fiscal shape. There's other states that are functionally bankrupt. They have all these massive unfunded liabilities, massive gaps in their pension system. Some of them are like 40% funded, 45% funded in their whole pension thing. And the thing that gets me is a lot of those areas, they will have like someone be a police officer in like New York City, and a lot of times when they retire and start getting their pension, they move to Florida and spend the money here. So they're not even getting the bang for the buck. We end up getting the bang for the buck as a result of that. So we're in really good situation. Now, we've also had, since I've become governor, we've been #1 in new business formations across the United States every single year since 2019. So Florida is a place where people want to start businesses, and it's not easy to do businesses. Most new businesses don't succeed, but I think we've made it so that it's an inviting environment for people. Of course, we have the highest credit rating you could have, AAA, which is not always true with the federal government, and I think people really in almost every part of Florida understands intuitively, without even me telling you, we are #1 in domestic in-migration. People fleeing from some of these other states. Florida's the place where people are looking for brighter horizons. I always tell people, I'm not asking for people to move to the state. There are other governors that will beg people to move to their states like they need. I'm not doing that. We've got a lot of great people. We've got a lot of great stuff. You know, businesses that move here, a lot of times they're doing it organically. It used to be we'd have to go around the country years ago and try to persuade. Now people are persuaded already and they're doing it. So, you know, we have a lot of folks that want to move here. Now there's challenges with that too, but I do think it is a testament to the fact that in a free country, people that can vote with their feet, they're choosing Florida over any other state in terms of the net in migration. We also are, if you look at our economic growth, 2019 when I became governor till the present, the whole U.S. economy has grown at 11% total. Our GDP has grown 22% here in the state of Florida. We've almost doubled economic growth throughout the rest of the country. We have also added jobs in 49 of the last 51 months since May of 2020, obviously with the COVID interruption that we had briefly. And our private sector job growth rate has exceeded the nation's as a whole for 40 consecutive months. So we're out kicking our coverage. We're doing better than the nation as a whole. We still feel the effects of these policies that we've seen out of Washington, but we've worked really hard to be able to mitigate. I mean, for example, our budget is $115 billion, $116 billion, somewhere in there. To put that in perspective, New York State has fewer people than we do now, and their budget's twice the size of Florida's budget. But what are they spending it on? Are their roads better than ours? No way. Are their schools better? No. Are their services more efficient? I don't know. If you needed a driver's license, would you rather do it in New York or would you rather try to get your license in Florida? I mean, Florida would be better. Unless you're an illegal alien, then you're better off in New York getting it because we won't give you one, and they probably would put you up in a hotel and give you a bunch of benefits, but that's neither here nor there. So we have a really lean, mean ship, but you know, that is, in the overall scheme of the economy, 116 billion, that is a drop in the bucket. So in things like inflation, whether we cut spending a little bit like we did, which was right, or even if we would have increased, that is not moving the needle on inflation when the federal government is borrowing and printing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars every year. So our philosophy has been the last few years is, okay, let's provide relief to Floridians and make sure that we're doing whatever we can. So one thing we did, and Blaze was helpful with this, we now in the state of Florida, for families who have, for baby care, no baby items are taxed anymore in the state of Florida. Diapers, wipes, cribs, strollers, anything involving baby, you get tax-free. So if you think about that over the period of how many years where they're in diapers, where they're doing this, all this stuff adds up. I mean, I can tell you, I mean, we're 7, 6, and 4 now. We went through a lot of diapers. It's expensive. And so that, just on that, you're saving. You know, when I became governor, we had, our daughter had just turned 2 right after the election in 2018, and our son was 9 months when we took the oath of office. We didn't even have our 3rd yet. And so as we worked through, they got bigger. And so when we did the tax-free baby items, our youngest was basically just getting out of diapers. And I remember when we did the bill signing, I signed it, everyone was happy. When I went home, you know, I told the First Lady, yeah, you know, we just did, you know, tax-free for all baby items to help families, you know, navigate the cost. And she just looked at me and said, why didn't you do that the first year you were governor? Well, we didn't have Biden inflation then, but nevertheless, people are saving. So we're working really hard to be able to do that, and I think it's something that's really important. Final thing I'll say before I get to the announcement is on education. We have the most affordable state university system in America for Florida residents. You know how much tuition has increased in the state of Florida at our state university since I've been governor? Zero. Not 1 penny of increase for tuition for Florida residents. Are you able to say that about universities in other parts of the country? I don't think so. Certainly, there's no private universities you'd be able to say that. So you're going, the average tuition is about $6,300 for Florida residents. Our top students who have good scores, they get 100% of tuition paid for with Bright Futures. And then one rung below that, we have the 75% scholarships that you do that. And we fully funded that in the budget again. We had some people in the legislature a few years ago. We're going after Bright Futures. I'm like, no, we're gonna keep that. It's important. People utilize it. It's also important to keep good students in Florida. We're competing with some of these. They just did a ranking. University of Florida ranked really high. Did you see that one? Number 4. And then Wall Street Journal did one last year. They ranked University of Florida the top public university in America, which is a huge thing. So having, and we're also been very clear about what the missions of our universities are. The missions of the universities should not be indoctrination of students. It should not be imposing ideology. It should be pursuing truth, teaching our students to be able to think for themselves, and ultimately preparing all of our students to be citizens of our republic. So we embrace the Western tradition. We think that's been a lost art across higher education around the country. And so we have things like at the University of Florida, we have this Hamilton Center, where you have all these scholars that have been recruited, and this is going to end up being the premier center for the study of the Western tradition anywhere in the country. And it may already be, but it will be very soon if it's not. And so, as a parent, our mission at the university is not to undo what you've done for 18 years in terms of the values and what you've done with your kids, but to give them a good foundation for them to be able to be productive citizens and to think for themselves. And that has a lot of attractiveness to folks nowadays, because we're really putting a premium on academic rigor rather than ideological fads. And so many of these other universities have gone in this direction. And that's why you see things like Columbia University with what has happened at these campuses. Like, I don't know if it's going to flare up again now that, the northern schools aren't back in school yet. They usually get in back after Labor Day. But are you going to have more Hamas protests going around? Are they going to take the janitor hostage like they did at Columbia? Are they going to burn things down? Are they going to deface buildings? Are they going to do that? If they do it, I don't think any of those universities hold them accountable. In Florida, if you do that, you will be held accountable. We're making sure of that. The inmates don't get to run the asylum. Honestly, it's a privilege to be a student at one of these universities. You don't have a right to just conduct yourself in ways that are violating the rules of the community. And for too long, there was never any accountability. I think a sense of entitlement developed among so many students. So we have that. It's affordable, and you're able to do, which I think is just something that's really, really big. So I'm very proud of that. But, and I always say this, as proud as you are of some of these rankings, as proud as you are seeing more people wanting to apply out of state, and you do know that we do have for good students out of state, if they have certain test scores, they can qualify for in-state tuition based on their grandparents' residency in Florida. So we've done that, and we've helped a lot of students out of state who have roots in Florida. And I think our goal is, if you're a really good student, we'll entice you to come, and then we'll keep you in Florida. So you do that. But I always say a 4-year brick and ivy university is not the only way to be successful in this country. It's not even the best way for many people. So we've worked really hard at workforce education. We set a goal in 2019 to be the #1 state in workforce education by 2030. We're getting there. We're getting there. And we've done huge increase in apprenticeships, huge increase in really tangible programs at our state college, throughout our state college system, but even working with the high schools. And we now, in this most recent budget, we actually have programs in middle school for vocational education. It used to be everybody would do vocational. Then they said, no, everyone's got to go to college. And that was kind of what people were saying for 20, 25 years. Well, what that's led to is that led to a lot of people go deep into debt at some of these universities, not even end up graduating. But then if they do graduate, the degree's in something like zombie studies. And so what does that end up doing? It's not, and then they end up working a job they could have at high school. So we want that pathway for people. Look, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to do certain, yes, do that. But there are a lot of great pathways where you can do very well financially if you have some of these concrete skills. So we've done everything from artificial intelligence. We've done things with aircraft mechanics. We've done things with commercial drivers, like the truck drivers, to produce more truck drivers, and it's really, really good. So one of the things we've utilized is this governor's job growth grant fund for workforce education, because I think that you can attract more investment in the state when people know that the state is committed to providing students with the types of tools needed to be able to perform in whatever industry comes our way. And so you have in the Space Coast of Florida, we have high school seniors that will get certified in aviation mechanics, and they can get hired right by Elon Musk's company, right out of high school. That's happened. Make pretty good money doing that. So we're going to continue to do workforce education with Job Growth Grant Fund. Now, today, we're bringing the Job Growth Grant Fund to Citrus County because I think the workforce is important, but there is a need to have the infrastructure that can produce growth in industry. And some places have it, some places may not. And there's a whole host of things you could do. I mean, we just did a road in the Space Coast on the other coast of Florida, to help connect the airport to this industrial center that is going to do really, really big things, but you needed that logistical piece to be able to do it. So we put in, what was it, $5 million, $5.5 million? So we put that in, build it, and do it. So this is a great fund. It's very nimble, and we're able to go and make good adjustments. And so Citrus County applied for an award under this because you have the Holder Industrial Park, which is trying to attract more and more investment. And so I'm proud to be able to say, I mean, this, first of all, Holder Industrial Park is designed, it's planned, it's shovel ready. This can be something that could make a really big impact. So we were requested to award $2.8 million through the Job Growth Grant Fund to Citrus County to help with the infrastructure in and around Holder Industrial Park. And I'm pleased to say I am here delivering that $2.8 million for Holder Industrial Park. So this has an opportunity, has the potential to help facilitate some significant return on the investment. And we want to be able to empower communities to do that. It's a beautiful part of the world right here. I think that'd be attractive for a lot of people to want to work here and want to invest here. So we're going to do that. I'm also here because we're not too far away. So last year I was down in Citrus County after Hurricane Idalia. And you had a lot of people, they focus on where the storm actually makes landfall, which was in the Big Bend section of Florida. And we actually had Debbie do the same thing this year, almost the same exact track 1 year after that. Not as powerful, but still. But with Debbie, we had flooding in Sarasota and Bradenton, far from where the eye of the storm crossed land. And it was similar when you had the flooding in this area. The eye of the storm did not hit this area. It was 100 to 150 miles, however much north of where it ended up hit, probably about 100 miles. And but yet you had it. And so we were down helping. You had a great response. We provided support. But that Idalia, and we've been doing things to help with Idalia ever since. Well, one of the areas that was kind of ground zero, just to the right of the eye of the storm, was up in Cedar Key. And so we have something called the Rural Infrastructure Grant Program. We are going to be able to award $2.5 million through our Rural Infrastructure Fund to Cedar Key to rehab 6 sewer lift stations within the city limits, which were damaged with Hurricane Idalia. And we're also going to kick in $620,000 to the town of Cross City to perform infrastructure and water quality improvements. And again, that grows out of what's happened in the aftermath of Hurricane Idalia. I think it was, is it tomorrow, the 1-year anniversary? Yeah, I mean, so that'll be a year that they've done that. So I think this is exciting what's going to happen in Citrus County. I know we've been helpful on some things in the past. We want to continue to work together at the local and state level to provide infrastructure, workforce training. Look, we're not, I tell people, it's like the state, we're not the ones actually creating the jobs. We're creating an environment so that you can have more manufacturing and more industry. And that ultimately develops. And when you have the infrastructure, you have the workforce, then it's something that you can do very well. And so why don't we present the check? So whoever from Citrus County would like to come up and accept this, we can make it happen. Okay, so come. You too? Okay. Come on.
Don, come on, you work so hard on Holder.
And Ken Cheek. Ken Cheek.
All righty. You got it? Get over here. Oh, okay, let's move this way. Here we go.
Heed the warning, don't fall off.
All right, we ready? Good deal. Congratulations. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
All right, we're going to hear from Alex Kelly, Florida Commerce.
Well, Governor, thank you so much for your leadership and support today in making this Job Growth Grant Fund Award for Citrus County for the Holder Industrial Park site. And thank you for making these Rural Infrastructure Fund Awards also for Cedar Key and for Cross City. We talk a lot about economic development, workforce development from sort of blue sky days perspective. But as you were noting, Governor, and of course, as we well should, Florida is leading the nation in the world, really, in so many different ways from that point of view. But days like today are equally important, where we talk about economic growth, workforce growth, and in some respects bouncing back, right from a sort of gray sky days perspective, deep in the heart of communities like Citrus County and the region around. And when we talk about those gray sky days when maybe a community gets knocked down but gets back up quickly, as you did, and Governor, when you and the state of Florida are helping a community get back up quickly, when the legislature is leaning in to help a community get back up quickly, get back up on its feet, become more resilient, and become more infrastructure, workforce, and business ready. Days like today are really a must-have celebration too. Governor, thanks for your leadership. I will say regarding the recent storm, Hurricane Debbie, we've already seen 42 emergency bridge loans go out to businesses throughout the region for nearly $1.6 million to help those businesses keep their doors open and get back on their feet. And likewise, we're going to see another 16 loans going out about a day or two for a few more businesses that were impacted by the storm. And these kind of awards, they're bridging sometimes small gaps, sometimes large gaps for businesses. Just like last year when the award was made in October of last year for a $5 million award. Mayor Meek, for you and your team, it was great to work with you on that to help Crystal River. Help Crystal River, kind of bridge that gap in operations. And so, Governor, it's great to be here in Citrus County to really see and support this vision. It's great to work with the team here in Citrus County on this vision. That frankly, it's probably going to change Citrus County and maybe the region for the next 20, 30, who knows, 50 years from an economic resiliency point of view. I mean, it really is a catalytic change, and it really is a big vision. And I actually reflected on this a little bit, because I actually used to live in Citrus County for a little bit, a long time ago, 22, 23 years ago. I'm a little older than I look, but I lived here a long time ago, early on in my professional days. And Citrus County is, Governor, you said, is a great place to live. It's a great place to live. But this community needs that injection of high demand, high wage, job growth. It's going to be catalytic for the future of this community, perhaps more so than a lot of other parts of the state. And that's a vision that was brought forward here locally by the team here. And so it's great to be here to support that local vision and really elevate it. We're looking at, directly about 1,000 jobs are going to come out of this. Indirectly, about 2,000 to 3,000 more jobs will come out of this. That's the kind of change that when you think as to how that relates to maybe young people who are growing up here, that is an opportunity to say, I love Citrus County, I want to stay here, and there's going to be a great job here for me to stay here. And that's the same kind of catalytic opportunity that says to moms and dads in Citrus County, when their youngsters are growing a little older and they're getting to that point in life where they're going to make some of those decisions about their education, about their career, that's a peace of mind for moms and dads that says, if their young ones love Citrus County, they're going to have an opportunity to thrive here and stay here. And Governor, thank you again for your support of both the investments in Cedar Key and Cross City as well. Those investments and really Rural Infrastructure Fund investments, Governor, that you made in November of last year, once again then in February of this year, and now these two investments, they're really all based on prioritizing those communities that had during Ingolia, and even some to a lesser degree during Debbie, had some of the water and sewer and other critical infrastructure get overrun. And there's engineering, there's infrastructure that needs to be modernized, because all of that relates to the ability of those communities to stay open, support their schools, support their businesses, and support their residents. And so, to that end, I just want to close by saying thank you to all of our local partners, particularly here in Citrus County, for working on these. I want to thank, too, Duke Energy was a big part of this project here in Citrus County. I want to thank them for their effort. And really just, want to say, just looking forward to continuing to support you on these projects as you build them out and grow those jobs and create that opportunity. So thank you so much, Governor.
Good morning. Governor, I just want to extend our deepest gratitude to you for coming down and awarding us this grant. I think you're probably the only governor that has ever physically came to our county and given us a check, and more specific for economic development. So thank you very much. And feel free to drop one off on your way through anytime you like. We'll take it. This truly is a pivotal milestone in economic development journey for our county. And I want to preface this by telling you a little story. And this means a lot to Citrus County. The Great Recession created a decade of economic consequences, which was some of the worst and darkest times of Citrus County. We had massive foreclosures. We laid off 250 of our staff in the county. We lost 600 of our most talented workforce. We spent down our reserves. And to put it in perspective, just this year, our ad valorem tax collections just equalized to 2008. So this little bit of help, this means a lot to Citrus County. We watch every penny we spend. We're very frugal. We do the right things. But the great part about this is that there is what was a dim light at the end of a long tunnel is now certainly getting brighter. It's been said that perseverance is not a long race, it's a mini short race, one after the other. And in short races, over the long haul, relationships matter. And I say that relationships matter because they truly do. I can tell you, Ruaz sitting back here with Duke Energy, she was a pivotal moment back in 2012 when all this collapse happened. Duke Energy came in, they brought their site selectors to town, they identified the Holder property, and we went to work in helping plan a future for economic development in Citrus County. Don Taylor, we can certainly share some war stories. I want to thank Mark Wilson and his team at the Florida State Chamber. There's never been a time that I haven't been able to pick up the phone and call Mark Wilson on his personal cell phone and say, Mark, we're in need. We need your help. And he's there to help thread the needle and guide us where we need to go. When this journey started just recently, back in May, when we found out there was some great opportunities, I was able to pick up the phone and call Jason Mon at the Economic Department in Tallahassee. He got right on it. He came in, he met with our team in Citrus County. We went to work and developed a plan to get this grant pushed forward, and we're seeing the rewards of that here today. We also have a great team in Tallahassee with our Senator, Blaise Ingolia, Ralph Masulo, who is termed out and leaving, but I am telling you, I'm looking so forward to the next state representative, Mr. Grow in the back. And I know he's going to do great things. I also want to recognize Ken Cheek. He does our utilities. Believe me, he does a lot of work. He keeps us straight. We've been acknowledged for some of the best work in the region on our BMAP. So thank you, Ken. Once again, Governor, I'll end there, but thank you. This is very important to us, and we appreciate whatever you can do for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You sure you want to turn over the mic to me, Gov?
Not really.
You good?
but, yeah.
All right. There's a reason why I am the governor's biggest cheerleaders, because I'm such a fan of what this man does. And just speak a couple to what we're seeing here and to what he's done across the state. You know, there are a lot of people, politicians, especially in stark contrast to what you're seeing in D.C. You basically have somebody running on a campaign right now, basically giving free money to everyone, basically trying to buy votes. And that's not how you're supposed to govern. You're supposed to govern by creating the environment when you're incentivizing businesses to go and do it themselves. Governor, I thank you because now we've known each other almost a decade, 6 years as governor. This man is a true believer. He is a true believer that when you create the environment, people will come. He did it during COVID in such a way that people from across the nation all wanted to move into Florida. And he's doing it with business also, not by giving freebies away to businesses. What he's doing is creating the environment where businesses can come and make it easier to open up shop and create economic prosperity, not only for their businesses, but for the surrounding community and the people that they work for. So this is what this job grant does, especially here in Citrus County. But I also want to speak to, you know, where did the money come from? The money came from a pot of money that was appropriated by the legislature because we have that commitment to doing it. This governor has a commitment. But you have to think about, we still have a pot of money there to give out to communities and counties such as Citrus County to foster economic development, but we're still cutting taxes. Heck, as a finance and tax chair, just in the past 2 years, we cut $3.2 billion out of the budget, still putting a bunch of money away, and yet we still have this pot of money and able to do these things. But there's one thing I think that is very, very important for everyone here to know, is that this governor, when he signs the budget, he goes through and he makes sure that we are having the best use of our tax dollars possible. And the governor, quite frankly, could just sign the budget. I know he does it during a press conference, but the governor can just put the budget away, send out a press release and say, hey, look at all the great things that we're doing for Citrus County. Governor just doesn't send out the press releases. He shows up because he wants to see the faces in the communities that he's making an impact on. And that is a big deal. For somebody to actually show up and show everyone how much they care, this governor cares. I know firsthand. Governor, thank you for everything that you do. And go Gators.
What do you have up your sleeve for next legislative session? Any teasers?
So the Ingolia press conference will start right now.
Blaze has done a lot. I mean, you know, all the stuff we've done, particularly since with the Biden border crisis. I mean, my first year as governor, we banned sanctuary cities, but then what we've done is, you know, ensure not only just, we never did driver's license for people here illegally, but not having any ID cards by local governments or any benefits, not recognizing those benefits from other states, making sure that we were doing everything we can to deter that border crisis from coming here. And he's really been, I think, the leader on almost every single one of those issues. I know there may be a couple things left in the hopper that we'll do, and you know, certainly I'm happy to get behind at the appropriate time. But I want to, you guys are fortunate. You got a really strong senator here who's delivered a lot in just, I mean, you've only been in a year and a half, 2 sessions, right? Yeah, so he's got a lot more good stuff to do. Okay, with that, I take any questions, anybody?
Governor, you brought up judges earlier in today's news conference, so I want to talk about the Transgender ban ruling. And opponents are saying that that's going to strain the healthcare system and harm patients. What's your response to that, Governor?
It is the mutilation of minors that is harming people. It is wrong to do this. You do not take some 14-year-old and pump them with hormone blockers and try to change their sex with an operation. It's wrong. People that have gone through that, there's so much lasting damage that has happened. It's not based on sound science. And in fact, most of these countries in Europe that are more liberal than the U.S., like Sweden, they have pulled the plug on this. The United Kingdom pulled the plug on this. So what we did is protecting young people. And here's the secret on this. There's a lot of people that make money on these surgeries. That's why it's going on. You'll have a parent, look, when you're at that age, that is a tough age. There's a lot of things that happen. And so as a parent, it's not easy to navigate that. I mean, I think anyone can appreciate that. I mean, mine are a lot younger than that, but it's like, I know once you get into that. And so, you know, you want to be able to help your kid. And so you'll go to a doctor will say, this is what you have to do. You have to do this surgery to try to change their body parts. And that's based on junk science. It's based on ideology. It's causing a lot of damage to folks. And what we did was put a stop to it in the state of Florida. We're not going to be a cottage industry for the mutilation of minors. That is not happening on my watch. And what we did by doing that is to just recognize, I mean, how would we possibly say as a state that you cannot have a tattoo at age 14? You would not be able to go sit at a bar and drink beer at age 16. Even with your parent, you wouldn't be able to do that. But somehow you could have these mutilation procedures where they're trying to change your body parts and try to change your sex at age 15 or 14. How is it? And because it's obviously inappropriate in those other situations, of course it's inappropriate here. Now, we had a judge initially say that was somehow unconstitutional to not allow, which, first of all, that is like, no one would have said that it was unconstitutional even 10 years ago. It conflicted with what the 11th Circuit had already done, which is our federal court of appeals that covers Florida, Georgia, and Alabama, because they upheld Alabama's law that was very similar. So we knew on appeal that we would win. We were able to win that, and so that's going into effect. But that is going to provide protection for people in very vulnerable situations. We are not going to let these people who make a lot of money off doing these things be able to do that. And you know what happens is they do a procedure at age 15. And a lot of the dysphoria that happens with young people resolves itself by the time they become 18 or 19. That's like 80-some% of the cases. Why would you do these irreversible surgeries when it's likely to resolve anyways? And so what happens is then they get older, they have huge problems. Some of them are sterile, get sterilized with this. Others have all kinds of other physical problems. It causes emotional problems. But these guys made money off it. You should be able to sue those people that are performing those procedures. I think that should be anywhere in the country. You should be able to sue for damage that is done, because I think it's a false bill of goods that's being done. And we're actually now finally starting to see courts produce or accept some of the evidence that shows that this is a bill of goods. And so I think it was a no-brainer that was upheld. It should be upheld, and I think that the United States is lagging behind many other industrialized countries. A lot of these other countries dabbled in this with the sex changes for minors, and they recognized that it was doing a lot of damage, that there was no solid evidence-based medicine to support it, and that they discontinued it. And so Florida, we're kind of one of the leaders here in the United States. Clearly, you've got big problems with the administration in Washington and how they view all this stuff. But, you know, you are in a situation where, depending on how the outcome of the election goes, I could absolutely see a Harris administration try to wield the administrative state against states that have done things like we did to protect minors from the mutilation procedures, but then also even things like ensuring that you're not jamming the men in the women's sports. We've protected women's sports in the state of Florida. They have a right to compete with fairness and integrity. You can be someone, you're gonna swim on the men's team for 3 years, then switch to the women's team, and all of a sudden you're the national champion. People realize that's a total fraud, and it takes away opportunities for women. But I absolutely could see them trying to turn the screws on that. I mean, they threatened, when we first did our women's sports bill to protect women's sports, they threatened to withhold federal school lunch money from poor kids over this. And I'm just thinking to myself, you really want to see the boys compete against the girls so much that you're actually going to take away, you know, some of the school lunch money? I mean, it's just nuts. But a lot of it is motivated by ideology. It's not motivated by anything. And it's kind of a perverse view of so-called social justice, because you'll have people say, hey, you have this transgender athlete, usually a biological male who is identifying as a female, and they say it's justice that person can compete against the gender that they conceive themselves to be, which, first of all, I don't really buy that in isolation even, but What about the justice for the 99.9% of the women athletes who now have to deal with this? Why aren't they ever consulted or considered on this? It's all about an agenda. Meanwhile, you've got a lot of people that have worked very hard, and they're left in the dust effectively on this. So, I think that we just need to be right with what's true and factual, and we cannot get carried away by ideological agendas. And I think the medical industry, unfortunately, on this issue with the surgeries for the minors, they've made a lot of money off it. The science is junk. But we also saw some of the nonsense they were spewing during COVID. It's one thing to try to say something that you needed to do something, but when that obviously didn't work, you got to acknowledge it didn't work, right? I mean, to say that if everyone just wore a cloth mask for 6 weeks, COVID would end, which the CDC said, that was not true. And even when it was obvious that wasn't true, they kind of kept digging in. And so I do think that this issue of the surgery for minors is part of a larger issue where we've really seen the politicization of the medical establishment. We've seen the politicization of medical school education throughout this country. I think Harvard or Columbia, one of them, they showed the medical school graduates taking the Hippocratic Oath, but it was basically like a woke Hippocratic Oath. It was talking about like race and gender and ethnicity and all this stuff. And I'm just thinking to myself, that is not how we used to train physicians, and yet you're seeing that seep in. So the state was right to do what we did. It's going to protect people. It's going to avert a lot of harm that's being done in other parts of the country. And legally, it was a no-brainer. This just is constitutional.
This morning, an article that said, is DeSantis losing his grip on Florida? That's after, I guess, fellow Republicans have pushed back a little bit.
So first of all, I've never categorized as me having a grip on anything. I'm the governor, right? I discharge the duties of my office. I have the ability to set an agenda and deliver that agenda. And I can tell you, there's not another governor in the country that has delivered more than we have since I've been in. That's just the reality. Now, we've worked with people like Blaze in the legislature very well, and I think we'll continue to do that, but we're going to continue to be very, very successful. But I think the problem with like a lot of people, they try to make everything so political about, this person is dictating. No, the reason we've been successful isn't because I had a grip. It's because I was standing for things like the issue you just mentioned, like some of the things we've done with illegal immigration, like the economic policy that people recognize were good policy, and they wanted to see it. If we're out there saying we're gonna fight Biden's border crisis, if Blaze were to be your senator and say he wanted to side with Biden, you guys wouldn't like that. Now, he would never do that, but the reality is getting things done and really leading, and we're going to continue to be able to do that. So I've never been one to follow chatter at all. I do not care about it. I don't read. I don't read the chatter. I don't listen to the chatter. I don't do anything because the chatter changes, on a daily basis. The news cycles change. That is not the way you can be a leader, by worrying about chatter. And Blaze mentioned during COVID navigating us out of that. The best decisions I've made as governor to say kids must be in school, every school has to be open, to say everyone has a right to work, because you had local governments, not here, but in South Florida, some others, they were restricting businesses. And so we did, a couple months into COVID, we said no local government can restrict your right to work or operate a business. You can't fine people for not wearing masks or things like that. So all those decisions that really set the foundation for Florida to boom, because we were the free state of Florida, none of those were considered popular at the time. I had quite frankly, there were a lot of Republicans who were not supportive of what I was doing. Every Republican now says those were the right decisions. At the time, that was not the case. So if you listen to chatter, you're not going to be able to get the job done. So that's not anything I do. I don't conceive of my job in those types of terms that people like to do. I can tell you we're going to continue to be very productive. We're going to be rolling out some more stuff over the next couple months. But, this is election season. There's a lot going on with that. And I think Republicans in Florida are going to do well. We're clearly going to have a supermajority in the Florida Senate of Republicans still. And I think we're going to have a really big majority in the House. I think we're over 80 some now. Now, 22 was a high water mark. I mean, that was a massive landslide, and that you saw that up and down the ballot. So we'll see how 24 plays out, but I think it's going to be a good year, and I think we're going to have an awful lot to do when the dust settles on that. So stay tuned, and I hope to be back. I don't necessarily want to have to see anybody's roads flood or homes flood. So hopefully, knock on wood, we get through. But I do know this: we prepare for that, and we're just now getting to the height of hurricane season. I think once you hit September, it's like that month is really, there's a lot of static out there. So we're prepared. We've done a lot. We did have Debbie, which was a relatively modest hurricane in terms of the wind intensity. We know that there could be stronger, more frequent ones as we get into this period. And so hopefully it doesn't happen, but we're always prepared for something major to happen. And I think there's no other way you can do it. So if you see me pop up on the Weather Channel at some point over the next 30, 45 days, you'll know that we're trying to get ahead of it and are getting ahead of it. So we'll see what happens. And then we look forward to this Florida versus Miami game on Saturday. Should be good. Thanks, everybody.